This is the Instant Speed Podcast, episode number 61. Our guest today is none other than the professor of the Tolarian Community College. Yes, that professor is going to join us for a nice discussion about Flesh and Blood and all things cards. But before that, I do want to remind you that this show is always brought to you by kayfabecards.com. Yes, the Instant Speed Podcast is brought to you by Kayfabe Cards, where fantasy and reality finally meet. Yes, they finally have met. They swiped right on each other. Good for them. Kayfabe Cards is the place to go for all of your Flesh and Blood needs, be it singles or sealed product. Get your orders in for the holiday season. Throw them in there, but it's not just that. Hey, you want some stuff for Pokemon, Magic the Gathering? They got your hook up there, so go to kayfabecards.com. That's Kayfabe. Yes, Kayfabe Cards. Be who you want to be. What do I want to be? I want to be talking to you about the facts, ladies and gentlemen. Outsiders, the latest booster set from Flesh and Blood, will be released on the 24th of March of 2023. The pre-release weekend, it's a 4-day affair, Friday through Monday, March 17th to 20th. And I promise you, this is going to be a drafter's dream of a set. So if you're into limited, if you're into drafting, you're going to get your licks in with this set. I don't think it's as good as Welcome to Wraith was, if not better. So you'll get more details, the complete picture on January 10th concerning this set. But until then, you guys can all speculate about what Outsiders is going to be. Okay, so community related stuff. Well, I want to put the focus a little bit on the Fab Team Cup by Fab Foundry. Yes, a lot of the teams out there, including Team Kayfabe Cards, which is coming off a 5-0 sweep last week, by the way, are up against some nasty teams in the Flesh and Blood community. And I've got a game in. I'm undefeated, ladies and gentlemen. It's 1-0, but it counts. But there is a nice way that you guys can get, kind of locked and loaded on some competitive action before we wait for ProQuest season, which is going to start on January 14th. Last bit of news before we dig into the main discussion, the meat, if you will, is that Salty Logs is going to have their December episode recording soon. So do you have some salty chat logs from Talishar? Send them my way so that me and my thespian buddies can go ahead and dramatize all the saltiness and the sadness from your Talishar game. So send me those screenshots of the chat logs, give us a little bit of the context, and you may have your submission acted out on another episode of Salty Logs. Okay, our guest, again, is the professor of the Tolarian Community College. We discuss a whole lot of things. We discuss about tribalism and community animosity between games, how to harmonize between each other, staples, prices, collectability versus accessibility, his involvement in Flesh and Blood moving into 2023, as well as all of your questions answered as best as we can, friends. This is the Instant Speed Podcast, and we're going to get nitty and gritty with the professor. The Instant Speed Podcast welcomes a unique voice in the TCG landscape. He is a headmaster of the Tolarian Community College, a trusted voice within all card game communities, frankly. Welcome to the show, the professor. How are you?
I'm very well. How about yourself? Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's an honest pleasure to have you on board. Again, you and I got to meet at Worlds in San Jose. We got to have a nice dinner, a couple drinks, and just chill out. Obviously, we were both very busy, so we didn't necessarily get all the bro time that you and I may have wanted. But
well, I'm glad we're going to be able to catch up on some of that time here, bro.
Yes, and this is the thing is now this is all on the record. So all of that nitty gritty fun stuff that we used to talk about, not
sure.
This. No, that's the after dark. Yeah, no.
Yeah, so we're not bringing up the or the none of that. None of that.
There's no Patreon tier high enough to reveal those secrets. No, the veil remains.
Right.
Firmly in place. So the first thing I like to do with new guests, obviously, your origin story within card games dates back probably since, the invention of the wheel. We're both old. That's what I'm getting at. Right?
That's great. I love coming here and being told I'm old. This was wonderful. Thanks for having me. Where's the you've been doing this so long and yet you look so young, Professor?
I was getting there.
Since the invention of the wheel, the only thing older than me is fire. What the hell kind of podcast is this?
Yeah, you and I are built from the same cosmic stock that like the Earth eventually kind of that same carbon atoms that, humped each other to create the Earth. We are part of that initial stock.
I'll have you know that 40 is the new 30.
Damn right. Because I approach it, and I'm glad that some people still have that optimism. Because people,
you're not approaching it. It's approaching you, and it's going to hit you like a dump truck.
Don't tell me that.
This is where you're headed. This right here is where you're headed. Look at that,
dude. Yeah, well, that's not a bad thing. Like you look great, dude. Like I'm just saying, like some of the compliments.
There we go. Boy, I had to do to get that.
Yeah.
Wow, all right.
You led the breadcrumbs.
Stop. Stop. You're too kind.
The breadcrumbs were very adeptly laid, and I walked right into that gingerbread house. All right, so tell us your origin, at least when it comes to Flesh and Blood. Your first, when you were first made aware of it, and how you got involved. Your first impressions leading up to where you are now, and we're going to dig into a lot of your 2023 involvement. But how about just giving us a little bit of that landscape moving up to today?
It's funny. I was asked about that a little bit at Worlds, and I've realized that I don't quite fully remember how I was first introduced to Flesh and Blood. I think it was just something that, I get a lot of requests in the comments for a whole bunch of games, from card games to even board and video games, mostly card games. And so, I see a lot of comments saying, oh, hey, Final Fantasy, Digimon, Flesh and Blood. And I don't think there was ever any one moment. Like I wasn't just one day completely oblivious of Flesh and Blood, and then I saw this ad or a YouTuber or something like that. I think I just started, it kind of permeated. It just kind of came in to my awareness that there was this game called Flesh and Blood. And I make a note of what people recommend. I can't play everything, and I am primarily Magic and always will be. But, it was like, oh, Flesh and Blood, what is this? And I think that maybe I did become aware of the kind of controversy where, because of Flesh and Blood's nature, that it's an outsider kind of game, that it wasn't made by a corporation. It was just made by a guy who's trying to take on the corporations and the industry. And there was a lot of backlash to that, where people were saying, well, this can't be legitimate. This idea of the illegitimacy of a game, which is bizarre to me. And I think that also piqued my interest, because it doesn't make sense. It's like, imagine if everybody was talking about a movie and people said, oh, don't go see that movie. It's fake. People aren't really seeing that movie. That's not a real movie. It's like, wait, what do you mean it's not a real movie? Is it I can get it on DVD? Yeah, you can, but don't buy it. It's not real. What? It's illegitimate. It didn't come from Warner Brothers or Paramount Pictures. Okay, so it's an indie film? Yeah, but it's not no. And I heard this about Flesh and Blood, and that to me was kind of crazy. And so I just keep a list of stuff. And the thing that interests me in Flesh and Blood was equipment. That I've said before, I'm the type of guy who loves to dress up his characters. Like I play Skyrim, not to beat dungeons and dungeons, the things. What do they call them?
Are they called raids? I've never played Destiny. So.
No. You've never played Skyrim? Even I've played Skyrim. And I'm as old as fire. The caverns you go into in Skyrim. And I don't like any of that stuff, but I like to dress up my character and like, oh, cool. Now he's an assassin. Now he's a bard. And the idea on Flesh and Blood, when I heard about that, you have like a foot slot, an arm slot, your weapon, you have two hands, but there's some two-handed weapons and one-handed weapons. What are you going to wear on your head? I immediately got interested, and I like about it in a casual way. And then I got flack from big names. I started getting DMs. Hey, don't talk about Flesh and Blood. What? You don't want to do that. What?
It's like the Yakuza getting into your DMs. Just be like, you don't talk about this.
I've never experienced anything like this. I have done videos on non-Magic games. I've done videos on bigger name things like Digimon and weird indie stuff, Binding of Isaac, the card game, old classic smash up that nobody's even interested in anymore. That's still fun and you should check out. But and no one is like, what are you doing a video on Smash Up for? What are you doing a video on Binding of Isaac? But I just mentioned, oh, Flesh and Blood looks cool. And I'm not going to but like some big names, like people who have weight in the industry are suddenly in my DMs warning me. And the one way you can ensure I want to do something is to tell me not to. So that's your first mistake, is telling me not to. Wow, did that get me interested? And so that was my experience with Flesh and Blood. And so then I just did the usual thing. I picked up a couple Blitz decks. I expressed interest in the game. I learned it with my wife, who helps me usually like learn to plays. She's very critical because she's who I play with, and so like we learned to play. We're both teachers. I mean, I don't actually work as a teacher anymore, but she still does. And so we're good at writing a syllabus, a script. We wrote up a script. We watched some of the videos that were out there. We had questions and how we do it a little differently. And it's just what we do. It's what we do for a living. I do 3 videos a week. I'm just going through my thing. And all the while through just regular social media means of like a tweet that I liked, or I think I made a throwaway line in a video about liking the Flesh and Blood and playing it. Again, there was all of this chatter about like, is it a real game? Is it illegitimate? Don't do this. And I've never to this day seen anything like that in my close to 10 years doing this business and being who I am. I've never, ever experienced anything like that. And it still blows my mind that anybody cares that people are playing a game that maybe you don't like. But like there was this concentrated effort to keep it down. I can't for the life of me. But yeah, and so I did my video. I think James White got wind of it right before the video was done and sent a little letter and some stuff. They're very good about taking care, I feel, of content creators, certainly better than a lot of other companies. There's a real personal touch to what Flesh and Blood does that resonated with me. Like I was like, wow, this is unique. And did my learn to play, and I did a couple other videos and got involved in the game, and I like to still do. Obviously, I know some people ask like why you don't do more videos, and the channel is predominantly Magic, and I don't have the time to do a second channel. So Flesh and Blood is going to be a thing that comes up from time to time as I'm interested, as I get excited, as I just, see an opportunity to talk about it. But I play it. I've got my decks. It's something I love. I really like what the game is about. And unlike all the people in my DMs, I want it to succeed.
Which is honestly, like, this is what really fascinates me the most. And we're going to kind of dig into a little bit about game communities, the cross-pollination and how they relate to one another, the animosity, the tribalism to a degree as well. First thing I want to sort of ask you, when I put it out there into the community, it just fired off a flare, and the most prominent question that was asked was, what is your favorite hero or class? Like, I just want to knock this out of the way because I got this about 24 times.
So I like Dash. And so therefore but it's Dash comes before class. Dash could be any class. They could have just said Dash is a wizard, and I'd be like, wizard, because I like the character of Dash. I like her aesthetic. I like how her deck plays, but because of Dash, I like Mechanologist, so I'm in luck with the current set, and I don't know when this will be coming out, but we just started seeing a little bit of preview imagery for the next set, and it looks like we're getting into some more, mech stuff and tech stuff, so it's looking like I'm going to get some new goodies. I don't know if we're going to get a new hero or anything like that, but I like Dash. I always liked, so when I was a kid, I wanted to be an inventor when I was like a little kid. I really wanted to be an inventor. I loved characters in cartoons who created their inventions, like, Gizmo on DuckTales and all that stuff. I just adored it. And so Dash was a character I encountered early on, and I thought, this is really cool. It reminded me of that kind of, like madcap inventor. I know you're not supposed to reference Gadget on Rescue Rangers because there's a weird cult built around her in Europe or something.
Really?
I don't know. It's real creepy. It's like it sounds like a joke, but there's apparently a cult built around that cartoon character that is actually alarming. I don't know. It's not just a sex thing. There is a sex thing, but in addition to that, there's a cult of worship or something.
Internet.
Like, yeah, it's weird. Like somebody told me that when I was like, oh, I used to love Gadget on Rescue Rangers. And they're like, dude, keep your voice down. Like, you're going to get somebody abducted. I'm like, what?
Why are people ruining my childhood? Like Rescue Rangers was awesome. Chip and Dale and Launchpad McQuack and flew a plane.
That's what I grew up on, at being older than fire. That's what I grew up on. And anyway, those were the characters I liked. So I really liked Dash. I guess in a way too, coming out of Magic, which up until recently had a very strict, like protection of its world and setting. It was low tech. And so I think there was something interesting to me about it still being a fantasy setting, but one in which tech was involved in a still being defined way. I liked the character. And it also didn't hurt that early on I tried out a Dash deck and I really liked how it played. And it's one of those things where it's like, the first time you fall in love, it's never the same after. And it was like, I dug the way the deck was going off and working. And I was like, this is what I want. And then I just commit to it. The way I play games is I get into something and I'm not somebody who tries for the best. I know Dash isn't the best. There was one person on Dash in the top, whatever, at 32 or something at Worlds at one point and stuff. And I was like, yay, that one person on Dash. I get it. She's not there. But there's also a certain charm to that. And I do like that because I'm not a competitive player and I'm not trying to get into the top 8. And so there's a charm to being on something different. I like the feel. That's the hero in class that I like. And I got to meet Sam Yang at Worlds, and I was disappointed he didn't have any merch playmats. But then someone else was really, really kind and gave me one of the classic Dash playmats that he had made. It was after I was no longer around him, so I didn't get it signed, but it was very nice. And I was like, oh, I usually am very hesitant to accept generous gifts because it's like, no, don't do that. But I was like, yeah, okay, I'll take the Dash mat. I'll take the Dash. I'll take the Dash mat because I love Dash, so I can use it in my next Flesh and Blood box opening or something.
That's me whenever somebody says, hey, can I, and like, I'm just like, no, like, I appreciate it. I'm sure somebody else would,
yeah.
But when somebody's like, hey, I got some Star Wars CCG cards for you, I'm like, yeah, whatever. I don't care. Right. What it is. Give it to me immediately.
Yeah.
In case I have to shout out Rachel at Max Ferocity on Twitter. She's the Dash cosplayer and she's a wonderful human being. So.
She's awesome. We were just seeing some tweets with her talking about that the other day. Definitely go give a follow. She's really cool.
She is. So the other question I wanted to sort of jump into besides that is you mentioned a lot of, people in your DMs. They are saying this. They are telling me not to do this. And there's a lot of negative connotations when it comes to a fresh game. I just happened late last night on the couch with a bag of chips nestled squarely on my tummy. There was they were showing the Da Vinci Code on TV, and I'm like, oh, screw it. Let's just slam this on. And one thing that just kind of popped into my head was the fact that you mentioned the more that you kind of showed interest in this game, the more people came out of the woodwork to sort of stop you. And it was the same thing. Right. As they were kind of deciphering the clues and getting closer to like this, the final culmination of the whole movie, more and more bad people came out of the woodwork to try to stop them. I feel like when you're onto something, there's this sort of sentiment that people are going to stop you when they don't want you to achieve that. Who are these people that you're mentioning? And obviously I don't need specific names, but
no, I won't give specific names. Right. It's not just, people involved. The ones that surprised me, it wasn't other content creators. It was people involved in the sales and distribution of trading card games. Like the people who it's, that are up there. Not all of them, a couple of them that I know and have relationships with. And that were just like, they were framing it as, I want to warn you. And I was just like, what? And it's like, the same people who are fine, with the Digimon and the new One Piece game and selling Yu-Gi-Oh cards. And for some reason, Flesh and Blood was I want to warn you, it's some kind of Ponzi scheme. And it was the weirdest thing. And it was one of the things that struck me was one of them said, we took some of their blitz decks and they're not playable. There's not a game there, is what this person said to me. There's not a game. Like, the decks don't work. And I was like, I'm writing my how to play. I've been playing it for a month now. Like, I'm not great, but that doesn't make sense. And I know you're not an idiot. You play games. So it's like, what are you? It just didn't make sense to me. And I don't know. I don't hear it anymore. I think we beat that, and now it's a lot of people that just don't have a lot of faith in like the business of the game, which is like, well, there's other measures of success than that to begin with. But it's weird how being an outsider creates this much, because the same people have been excitedly asking me, am I going to do a One Piece how to play? Like, literally the same, like a few of the same individuals are like, oh, you're going to talk about One Piece. And I'm like, I don't know. There's 800 new games. Why are you pushing this one? Like, maybe, I'm sure it's fun. I hope it's fun. I don't have that many hours in the day. I got a lot of games I play, like maybe, but like it's interesting where it's like, why are you pushing one and not the other? Why one and not the other? I don't fully get it.
So in which case, do you get the same amount? Like with Flesh and Blood, the success of the game is very apparent, be it statistically, in terms of revenue, how it's spreading, etc. The events can be smoother. Are they flawless? Absolutely not. There's a lot of things.
Sure.
For sure. But do you get the same kind of pushback or concerns about other games? And how much of this do you feel is genuine concern that people say, don't get burned by this? There's been so many other games that have come through.
Something else is going on. It's I don't know. So there's something else. There's something to Flesh and Blood that creates this idea of we don't want to acknowledge or dignify it. Like I said, I mean, I did a video on SoulForge Fusion. Nobody's like, hey, Keyforge folded and this, you really want to be risking telling people to go check out SoulForge? And I did one on the My Hero Academia that's using the Versus, gaming the system, and nobody's like, hey, that's changed hands and ownership a few times over the last 15 years. You really going to be like, nobody cares. Nobody even responded to those videos in terms of like messaging or anything. It's just like, oh, hey, this is what I'm playing. This is cool video, and for some reason, the only one anyone ever had anything to say on was Flesh and Blood.
So how much of this is community driven from specific games? Do you think, because I want to dig into tribalism in terms of, and again, I don't need to tell you about how deep you might go in terms of how many games you've played and been so intimately involved in various different communities. But I've played a bunch of games. I've been very intimately involved in a lot of them. And what I've found is that the second that somebody shows interest in something else, there's this kind of defensive posture taken by the community that they're threatened by the success of something else, which is then kind of sprinkled on with that of people so outwardly saying, hey, I really love this thing. And it's just, no, you're wrong. No, it's bad. And how much of that is an insecurity of your own state? And how much of that is just people who are like, trying to get in other people's kitchen?
That's not true for Magic. Magic, the Gathering community is one of the ones where like they're very quick to turn on their own product and be very happy at the idea of a Magic killer coming along. Like, Magic players, for the most part, have been thrilled for me doing Flesh and Blood content because they want competition. Flesh and Blood can theoretically help make Magic better, because a lot of this stuff that Magic does that people don't like, Flesh and Blood can apply pressure to the company to be like, well, you've got competition, so if you don't want to hold Grand Prix events, then competitive Magic players are going to maybe scratch that itch with something like Flesh and Blood. So people are rooting for Flesh and Blood's success in Magic, even if they don't play Flesh and Blood, because they're just like, yeah, apply pressure, screw Wizards of the Coast. There's a very different relationship. I did a video years back where it was just a comedy video. It was just a joke. And it was like, you remember those Mac versus PC commercials where it's like, I'm a Mac, I'm a PC. It was right when they made Magic Arena. And at the time, everybody talked about Hearthstone. And is this going to be the Hearthstone killer? So I did a video where it's like, I'm Magic Arena, I'm Hearthstone. And I was like, hey, Hearthstone, what are you doing over there? And we did this stupid little thing. And it was, we did 3 of them back to back, little short 15-second ones. And it was just mostly jokes. And I mainly did it where one of them made fun of Hearthstone, one of them made fun of Magic, and then one of them was just a little goofy and wasn't really attacking either. So Magic players came in and they totally disparaged Magic. And Hearthstone players came in and they totally disparaged Magic. And I realized, because the Hearthstoners were like, that's the one that was making fun of Hearthstone. That's bull. That's baloney. That's dumb. That's not what Hearthstone is. And they were defending Hearthstone. But the Magic players were attacking the video that was praising Magic, whereas the Hearthstoners were attacking the video that was attacking or making fun of Hearthstone. And I realized then that Magic players have this kind of self-loathing about their own game in a lot of ways. And so they've been very supportive of Flesh and Blood. Yeah, there's a big audience. You get a few people. It's like, I don't want to hear about Flesh and Blood, or it's a dumb game or whatever. But a lot of them say things like, well, it's not for me, but I really hope they do well, and stuff like that,
I try to always just sort of hammer down the fact that, hey, it's completely possible to like more than one thing. In fact, it's completely possible to love and appreciate and invest in more than one thing. I have a Magic collection. I'm very good friends with Magic casters, and I play, and I enjoy it, and that's totally fine. And this is the sort of the fact. It's like, just because what you like is part of the same essential genre or family, something else, like you could like other things. There's no shame in that. And at the same time, I really kind of, I take, like, as somebody who obviously is a Flesh and Blood person, like that's what I invest in. That's who I am. When I see people within this community try to go ahead and take pot shots at Magic, it's like, dude, like, what is that going to accomplish? Like, that doesn't do anything. And and I think Magic players don't need that extra kick in the teeth when they're already getting bent over real hard by Wizards of the Coast for God knows how long. Yeah. And that's very apparent. The game itself, Magic's an excellent game. It's a wonderful game, and it's a great community. The fact that the people who are essentially pulling the strings for it and steering the ship are kind of pointing it at the sun to a certain degree. You gotta kind of sympathize to, and you're
go easy on us. We have to deal with Wizards of the Coast. Come on.
Well, and at that regard, I feel like this whole thing of Magic players kind of not necessarily finally realizing, but seeing some sort of outward third-party realization that the way that the company is being run is you're squeezing it real hard now, and it's going to be kind of dried up later. I have a feeling also that there's might be some sort of feeling to that right now with where Flesh and Blood that community can kind of learn what's going on, both from the corporate side of like LSS and the community. It's like LSS needs to treat their players correctly with longevity, but at the same time, the community also has to realize that, there are really bad ways that other companies have been kind of bastardizing the product, despite the fact that the core of the product itself is a good thing and has created good things itself.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think that, look, company is going to company always, and there's always going to be decisions as a company you're going to make that are going to be upsetting and things you can't live in an ideal world. But, we like to joke in Magic, Wizards of the Coast, small indie company. LSS really is that small indie company. They've got a very relatively small staff. They are incredibly new to this still, and they are some of the most communicative and tuned in people that you're going to encounter. And so I think that, like, Flesh and Blood players are very lucky to have LSS as the company making their game. I think that a different company making their game, and they might soon be forgotten or overlooked. Or, like James White is not, I mean, I have spent time with the man at this point. He is not sitting around stewing saying, oh, we just got to be Magic the Gathering, we just got to be Hearthstone. Like I was at dinners with WotC people, and they were sitting around stewing, oh, Hearthstone, 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 like we wish we were Hearthstone, enter Magic Arena. And James White is like the opposite. It's like, hey, James, as you grow, eventually you'll probably need to have some kind of digital client to play this game, just for scope and people to practice at home. And as this business grows, right? No, I won't hear of it. This. And it's just like you've got a human there. You might disagree with the human, but he's got a passion for building something different, not for like all these games that come out and they're just like, look at Pokemon, look at Magic. Why can't we do that? Oh, real original there, everyone. You just wish you were Magic. You just wish you were Pokemon. Well, I know that isn't what's going on in the minds of LSS. I know that's not what they're doing. They're trying to do their own thing, and that's really cool.
What worries me to a degree, though, is that, it seems valiant, and in this stage where we're like 3 years in, but in my mind, I'm like, wow, at a certain point, maybe 5 to 10 years down the road, knock on wood, the game's still thriving and doing well. Maybe that is something that it no longer becomes an element of, hey, like this is our philosophy and I want to be very true to it. And at a certain point, maybe it becomes stubbornness, and it's yet to be seen. That's way down the road. But
I agree with you. And I think that is going to be a challenge for them. There's a point where, the artist who created the product is going to have to do a thing which is called run a business, and there are business decisions that go against art sometimes. And I mean, even I, just in my own business that started as a hobby, have seen those things where it's like, well, sometimes you got to look at it this way. And I do think that is something internally they will have to reckon with. They will need someone who can come in. You need that kind of, oil and water of art versus business to really find the right way that they can mix up together and such and create the next level. And I do think they'll be approaching that. And I don't know what's going on in their meeting rooms or whatever, but I do think that the company is led by a very passionate person with a great deal of integrity. But I also know that the one thing that can cost you in business is integrity. So, like that is definitely going to be like, there's a crossroads you hit. And that crossroads might be, you're going to need a digital client. It's time to suck it up. Why don't maybe do it right? Do it different. Do it like how will you do a digital client? But I'm just using that as an obvious example because I think that's one that's probably known about across the player base in terms of like, he's very against that. And that's really cool. And let me tell you, when Arena was being shoved down our throats and they were like literally considering should paper Magic, take a back seat to digital Magic, and everyone was just pissed and very upset. And it's like, wow, look at Flesh and Blood. They don't even want a digital client. Let's go see what they're up to. That's cool. But there's a point where a game's size probably needs some kind of digital presence, and I think that's going to be a question they have to answer. And how they answer that question will be a big test for them internally. I'm sure.
The way that I kind of see it is that James White was picture him as an expecting parent. He had the baby's room all set up, the crib, the books, the diapers, everything was set up. And then when delivery showed up, it was septuplets instead of a single. And like, you may have thought you were prepared, but you were not prepared for that. And it's you scrambling to catch up to just what it was. It was a success. You're happy, but holy crap. Literally and figuratively, there's a lot going on that you need to catch up to. And I like the point you made. Like, integrity makes for great headlines about a company, but it doesn't, if if Amazon was a fully ethical and with loads of integrity, they wouldn't be the cosmic force they are out there.
But I mean, maybe you don't have to be Amazon, but maybe you and maybe you can compromise. Like, how's this for a mental exercise? If you did have to do a digital client, what's the way you do it with integrity? What's the way you do it where it's like, this is what we're going to do? Is it going to be a not-for-profit digital client where it's there as a tool for your player base? You're going to stick a code in every pack, to redeem. You're not selling anything on your digital client. You're only selling packs at local game stores, and that's how you get things on the client. There's all kinds of ways you could go about it and be like, all right, like, we're not that isn't trying to be Hearthstone. When Magic wanted to be Hearthstone, they saw dollar signs. Maybe when somebody can make the right pitch about a digital client explaining why it's necessary for a game of a certain size, that it's like, okay, let's do it our way, the same way we've always done it. And I think that's a cool thing. I think that if anyone can do it, LSS can. I have a lot of faith in both James White, and I met so many people from LSS at Worlds, and I was just bowled over impressed with every last one of them. It was, again, like a breath of like, this is different. Like, I meet suits frequently, and I wasn't meeting suits when I was meeting the people of LSS, and I mean that.
It seems like every argument for a digital client essentially just rubs up against the philosophy in the wrong way for what LSS wants to do with Flesh and Blood. And you were there from the get-go with Magic, and the digital client of Magic Arena wasn't necessarily the first ever digital client for playing Magic Online. So can you just explain briefly about when that first sort of hit the mainstream of playing Magic Online and what that did to the paper scene and the tournament scene?
Well, Magic Online was always second to the paper experience. Magic Online was just, I mean, it was essentially tabletop simulator Magic. It was meant to be, this is Magic that you can play on your computer. It didn't have a very good business model in terms of profitability for the company. It didn't have very good software, but it was there to allow you a means of being able to play Magic from home without going into the game store. And I think that in a lot of ways, people liked Magic Online as this secondary supplement to Magic. They just really wanted a better interface, better software. And then Wizards looked at games like Hearthstone, and Magic Arena is to Magic Online what McDonald's today is to the original McDonald's restaurant. Not to imply that the original Magic Online was quality food, far from it. The original Magic Online was much more likely to accidentally put your hamburger patty outside the bun. Like, honestly, that was some very questionable software, but they really were looking to monetize and franchise with Magic Arena, and they set that economy to max in terms of just being centered on being a very consumer unfriendly economy and way of playing. And I think that ended up being its own doom, because it was a really cool interface initially, and they just, all their investment was in milking every last cent. And Magic Online originally was about recreating, like, the games you played on Magic Online were a 1-for-1 with what you would be playing at a Friday Night Magic game, at your game store for the most part. And eventually they didn't have all the cards at first, but they got a pretty good, amount of cards of the game's history on there. And I think they had a good thing. They just needed to have a major software overhaul, and they don't know how to do that. They're not a digital company. They're not a software company. They're a gaming company. And so they always had to hire someone to go do all that for them, which was how Magic Online came into be. They had to pay someone to make Magic Online, and then they just learned how to run it. Then they had to pay someone to make Magic Arena, and they just learned how to run it. But then people are like, hey, maybe we should have a multiplayer mode. And they're like, we don't know how to do that. Someone else built this thing. And that's kind of what happened with MitGo, and what's happened with Arena as well. And now the cracks are showing.
So one of the major detractors of people getting into the game is obviously there's always this barrier of entry in terms of price points, and getting cards, obviously in any card game, is going to be challenging when the best cards are usually the rarest cards, which then have a price point associated with them, which is tough to get into. The price point of staples is something I want to talk to you about, because you do a lot of great videos about, hey, is this worth it? Which is a very important aspect, because, hey, not everyone has the same kind of disposable income that they can drop on card gaming. Important cards being hidden behind not just majestic or mythic rarity, but even beyond that, these fableds now that are seeing play, like Heart of Fyendel, all the way down to the legendary equipment that can sometimes run you. I mean, the last major tournament circuit I played in, like the last ProQuest season I competed in, and nationals and whatever, I was running an Oldhim deck that, frankly, the sideboard alone was about a $600 to $700 investment. Now, I was lucky enough to open a lot of those and trade for a lot of those, but a lot of people who want to get into the game see this and immediately recoil and just say, fuck it, it's not happening. But on the same regard, specifically, I want to hone in on a card like Fyendel's Spring Tunic, like an iconic card. It's almost akin to kind of like the Black Lotus.
Yeah.
So it's accessible. It's been reprinted multiple times, but the price point on the card right now, I sold a non-foil reprint for $180. Like,
sure. Wow.
Yeah. And the major criticism of the game is saying, you want to play the game, you got to slam down $180 for a tunic, maybe $90 for a cap, this for this, for this. But can you talk a little bit about that balance between collector appeal and accessibility? When is it worth it? And this is not a criticism or an indictment on Magic in any way, but my argument is, hey, if I'm comfortable playing an Esper list that needs, 16 dual lands or whatnot, and I'm dropping $300 on those dual lands, why am I now going to be looked upon like some sort of Scrooge by?
It's the same. It's the same thing, and I think that it is definitely anybody from Magic looking at Flesh and Blood and saying, "Oh, you're going to have to spend $500-600 on equipment to get your deck together." And it's like, yeah, I got to spend $500-600 on my mana base. Doesn't make it okay. The issue is there, and the question of what should it cost to play Flesh and Blood? What should it cost to play Magic the Gathering, to put your deck together, to go about putting that together? That's a very valid question. It's not to say that isn't a problem, but it's to say this isn't a problem unique to Flesh and Blood. Hell, I don't know currently. I've been more in tune with competitive Pokemon in the past, but any competitive game usually has similar issues of the competitive decks are far from free, with exceptions, of course. Now, one of the sayings I've been hearing about Flesh and Blood that I like is people saying, in Flesh and Blood, your deck is more or less free. It's the equipment that'll cost you. That for the most part, putting together your deck, if you don't care about special treatments, really isn't going to be that bad. And there's a card here or there, but like for the most part, putting together your deck isn't the issue. The problem is everything that ends up being equipment and such for that deck. But what do you do about it? I think that you want cards to have value. If anything, you want there to be value in the cards in that deck because you want to trade what you open in packs for things that you want to play. You don't want it to be that everything in your deck is trash and then you don't have anything to you open up a booster box and you're like, well, none of this is worth anything except this one card. What's in your trade binder? Nothing. What am I trading? I think that what you want to have is a balance where instead of $100 cards, and it's okay to have a few. I think that's cool to have a Black Lotus. I do, especially since Spring Tunic is not a card I need if I want it. Like if I wanted to turn my casual Dash deck into a competitive deck, I don't need a Spring Tunic, do I? So that's great. Now I need another expensive card. That's less great, but I think it's okay that I think it's okay to have a Black Lotus if it's not every deck needs it. There was a period where it felt that way for sure. But I think that making it so that cards are more in the $5 to $10 range and less in the $100 to $200 range is something that helps a game's economy, where it's like, yeah, okay, this is a $2 card, this is a $1 card, these are 50 cents. Oh, that's a $5 one. Oh, you need this one here, that's $10, and I got a foil, so that's worth more. Like that's a lot healthier, because then you've got a lot of different options for trading. And when you end up with or sell and use the money to get what you want to get, that's a kind of trading. But you don't want to be walking away feeling like all the value is concentrated into too fine a point. I don't think that's good. And I think that is something that Flesh and Blood is still struggling with, but it is better than it was when they were having the supply issues, when, as you said, they were expecting a baby and they got quadruplets or whatever, and there was a huge run on the limited product, and booster packs were outrageous. And I'm just so sick of hearing somebody say, oh yeah, the booster packs are $12 each. It's like, no, they're not. You can get booster packs very affordably. Shut up. That happened a while ago because there was a lot of popularity and not a lot of supply. So you can do the math on that. Now they've done a really good job, actually, of making it so, would you like a booster pack? It is not a problem. You can get as many booster packs as you want at no markup of price. Have at it.
Yeah, you can get if you dig hard enough, you can get a case of unlimited Welcome to Wraith, which is, again, if you're starting out in the game, that's what you dive into. You get a case for that if you know the right people for probably 200 plus tax. I think that's very, it's incredibly affordable for 4 boxes of a game that you want to invest in. And if you pull the right stuff out of there, I was just listening to, I want to shout out some friends at the Flesh and Pod podcast, where I was listening to that this morning, and they were talking about how even staple cards like red Sink Belows, which is a common, are about $1 a piece. So you're getting some you're getting some pushback here, but from the perspective of collector versus accessibility, collecting versus accessibility, there was that first edition into Unlimited that never worked, and it was in my idea just a kind of a swing and a miss. But the way that they're doing things now with Marvels, reprints, and different finishes and different alternate arts and such like that, the Marvel and what Marvel treatment. What's your thoughts about that, and how they've kind of locked in on this model of not just satisfying those who are like, dude, I really need more Command and Conquers. Like, there's just not enough. Or versus the people who are like, hey, why is my first edition Command and Conquer tanking in price or whatnot? Or, like they want the whales looking to find, like you mentioned, like to really bling out what they've got.
What you want, ideally, is there to be a $5 Command and Conquer that anybody wants to play can have access to, and then you want there to be a $500 version that only the collectors are able to seemingly access, or someone who wins an event. And when you can achieve, there's a version out there. This is everybody dreams of this. Everyone goes crazy. They want this $500 special treatment, special version. It's out there. The collectors are happy. But if I just want to play, oh, yeah, here you go. It's hot off the stamp. Nothing special about it. They're $5 is an important card. $5-10 Command and Conquer. There you go. That's what you want to achieve, and that's tough. I don't know exactly how you do that. I don't purport to have the answer, but I do purport to say that when you have a system where people are able to play that bling and get reactions of like, whoa, you've got that version, that's the way to do it. But it's like, well, I can still play,
Well, this is what I'm sort of leaning towards, is specifically Command and Conquer. It was by design. I mentioned that card because they got the Marvel treatment. It got the Fabled treatment where hopefully, this kind of, like you mentioned, is a situation where, and Command and Conquers are on the rise. Like they're $90 a piece now or something like that for the unlimited non-foil versions. Like it's we're wheeling towards ProQuest season, so everybody's trying to sort of collect their gear and such. But I just want to wedge this question in here from Wolf Shadowmancer asking, do you feel that the game pieces dropping in prices, for instance, like Welcome to Wraith legendaries and the Dynasty legendaries, is overall healthy for the game? And I think I can suspect that your answer is going to be yes.
Yeah, it is. I do appreciate the idea of like, you need to have some level of confidence that if you're going to, get into the game, that that you're investing time and money. And it is valid to say, hey, I just spent money playing in drafts, buying packs, getting boxes, trading, getting these pieces, and I want these pieces to have a value. I think that's perfectly valid. I've never been against that. I don't advocate that it should be like a living card game. Everybody just gets 4 copies of every card for $10 and then we play. I think it's a collectible card game, a trading card game. We want to collect. We want to trade. I like trading. That's fun. Hey, I got $5 cards. You got a $23 card. That's a cool thing. I just up traded and that's fun. I think that's great stuff. And I think that, somebody who's proud that they have their, first edition, foil of whatever, and it's worth all this money, and the idea that we're going to reprint it into the ground isn't an appealing one. It's all about balance. And I do think that collectors need to always remember that if nobody's actually playing the game, then there's not going to be value to owning pieces of the game, because the real thing that I think a lot of actually people who are very deep into buying and selling cards in any game is what's going to be the next big hit? What's going to be this? Looking at it almost a little bit like a stock market, but what's actually got value in terms of, working in a deck. I just think there needs to be balance. I think that there needs to be a mind to both, in the same way that you don't want to go and say destroy people's collections by reprinting every single card into the ground and making everything worth a penny. You also don't want to make it so that anybody says, cool, I want to play. Well, that'll be $1,000. Cool. I'm going to go do anything else other than that. That's not a good thing either. And we need to find the right way to have access. I think actually another solution is just diversity of choices. Make it. It's a good thing that every deck doesn't need a spring tunic on your torso slot, right? Like, that's a good thing. How about we get more pieces, more choices? How about when I sit down with Dash, I've got a lot of different choices about what I might equip her with and strategies for her. Maybe all those cards have a value, and maybe there's a strategy where, this one isn't really worth that much. This one's worth an okay amount. This one's worth a medium amount. The more variety and options of, I don't run that card, I run this one. That helps out a lot, and that creates more pieces to be collected as well. So I think that you get into trouble when there's only one choice, where it's only like, well, there you go. You gotta spring tunic it. What are you gonna do? It's like, well, that sucks. How about other cards that fill in other functions and give us choices and variety in that gameplay? And that can succeed in there being budget options, and there being different strategies, and there being $5, $50 versions of cards that can go in that slot. What you want to hear is when someone goes, spring tunic's 180 a piece. You want someone to say, well, then just run Spider Silk Vest. What's that? Oh, I actually think Spider Silk Vest is better than Spring Tunic if you're running a Dash deck. What's Spider Silk Vest? Oh, I actually run, my Velvet Long Jumper. I don't know, like get some variety in there. Come on, let's get some choices. Let's get some options.
I hear you. Last bit here on card economy before we dig into your 2023 stuff. For the last question I wanted to discuss is: do you foresee or do you recommend even Flesh and Blood have something like Magic has, which is this list of cards that will never be reprinted?
No, that's stupid.
Okay.
No, that's stupid. Reserve list is stupid. It's a mistake. You don't do that. You can find the restraint in yourself to control what you print and how much of it. You don't need to make an unbreakable promise that's going to screw you later down the road.
Gotcha. Perfect. All right. So 2023, around the corner, they've just announced the new set, the Outsiders.
Yes, a little bit of a Mad Max feel to that, isn't it?
We're digging into all the underground shenanigans of Wraith. So I'm very excited about that. I've got some a little outside ideas of what that set's going to be. It's going to be a drafter's dream, I will say. But that is what LSS is doing regarding Flesh and Blood, at least in the short term. What are you doing in 2023 Flesh and Blood related? Why don't you just hit us with some of those juicy leaks?
I can't leak.
All right, fine.
Despite being older than fire, I'm not allowed to leak. I am working on a project with LSS. It is one that I had the pleasure of sharing the stage with James White at Worlds, and what has been revealed, what I can reveal, is that I am working with them on a product. It is not a sponsorship. Like people were like, "Oh, they're sponsoring him. He's going to do a video a week." On nope. I'm still a Magic channel. I'll do some Flesh and Blood content. I want to do a Flesh and Blood gameplay video. I've got some stuff in the works for Flesh and Blood, but I'm still a Magic channel. But I do play Flesh and Blood. It's not a sponsorship like that. I have been invited by James White to work on a product. And that product should be made known in 2023. And it's a collaboration between us. And all I will say is that if you know me, if you watch me, if you know who and what I'm about, I promise you that rule one is this is something that's available at your local game store. And I think if you know James White and the whole ethos of Flesh and Blood, you know that's true as well. So it's not some Kickstarter thing. It's not some exclusive to the internet thing. It's not some secret layer thing or any horrible thing like that. We're about supporting the local game stores. And so anything we collaborate on and create is something that is, it's available at your local game store. And that's where it's going to be found, where you play this great game. And beyond that, I think you're going to have to stay tuned.
All right. I won't Larry King you and press for
you
answers.
Want to feel free to make a guess while I sip my tea.
Okay. So my question is, will it be able to hold?
I said guess. I'm not answering anything. Make your guess. What's it? So we can flash back. So we can flash back to hear whether you got it right or not. What do you think that is?
All right. Well, when it gets released, you're coming back on the show, and you can tell me the "I told you so"s or "nice tries." But I'm gonna hope. I'm not even gonna throw anything out there in the ether too specific. But I'm gonna hope that it holds enough slabbed cards that I can bring and not have to carry a second thing about it. I'm not going to say anything else. You can kind of sip your tea, Brian.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm not going to say anything else. But if you need play testers, I'm in. Okay. All right. That wraps up the main discussion over here with our good friend, the professor. I've got some community questions. Brian, would you like to stick around briefly to just fire off these?
Yeah, absolutely. I got about 10 minutes for
We can do that.
Sure.
All right, friends, don't go too far. We got a quick message from BCW Supplies that the professor answers your questions. Instant Speed is proudly supported by BCW Supplies. If you need protection for your cards, be it sleeves, deck boxes, storage, organizational tools, or hey, are you a comic book collector, a coin collector? BCW Supplies has your hookup. Use the code ISP10. Get 10% off all of your orders. Go to bcwsupplies.com. BCW, protect, store, display. All right, friends, it is time to go wide on the professor as we go again on a series of questions. These have all been submitted by the community. Now, I took a little executive privilege here and took most of his time. So we're going to be very brief with all of these because he's got a bunch of stuff to do, such as working on his super secret deck box for Flesh and Blood. No, did I?
I didn't say that.
Did I say it? No? Oh, damn it. Tried to. Okay.
Don't do that, because then what's going to happen is it's going to be on the subreddit or whatever, and it's like, it's a deck box. It's not a deck box. I already did a deck box.
I know.
I don't repeat myself.
But it's not a deck box.
Repeat myself. I don't repeat myself. Remember that.
He doesn't repeat himself. He said it.
I don't.
He repeated it multiple times that he doesn't repeat himself.
Yes. Explain the joke. Explain the joke.
Got it. Explain this the joke. Is funny.
Makes it funnier.
Because,
Makes it funnier. Yes. Right.
Okay. First question. This is a 2-pack. Basically, multiple people have asked. So Dave, DGTCG, Nick Frawler, both asking, will there be more Flesh and Blood stuff? Shuffle up and play videos.
Yeah, I can say with certainty that there will be we did a shuffle up and play with a non-Magic game already. We did it with Yu-Gi-Oh. It worked. I was glad to see it worked. Tune in, support the show in general, because that's what we want to do, is have it so that the show is able to do videos that aren't Magic and still succeed. But I absolutely am doing a shuffle up and play, at least one, if not more.
Okay.
For Flesh and Blood.
Alrighty. Here's one. I'm trying to. We got dozens and dozens, so I'm trying to consolidate them to sort of similar themes. This one from Jimmy Tissell and Greg at Darth Prentice. The question gelled together is essentially, what does the professor think about Blitz as an entry point? And also, in your opinion, what would be the best product LSS could put out to sort of attract new players or to welcome new players?
I think that Blitz is great. I'm a big supporter of Blitz. I'm actually, I know there was recently a whole thing about, competitively speaking, Classic Constructed versus Blitz and what the roles should be and yada, yada, yada. I am obviously more of a casual enthusiast, type of player. And I like Blitz. I think it's what you want to start any new player on, but it's also, I'm seldom, like, if you were out here and we were hanging out and you say you want to get a Flesh and Blood game, I'd say, sure. What Blitz tech are you running? I'm very unlikely to say, sure, pull out your Classic Constructed. It's just not too likely. So I think Blitz is the way to go for new players. As far as products are concerned, I think they're doing a really good job on those Blitz decks. I think the only issue with them is maybe they're a little too slim and slender in the packaging almost. It almost looks like just such a free sample deck that I think a lot of people look at it and maybe we could work on a kind of, I don't even want to say a Blitz deck that's a little more expensive and has a little more razzle dazzle. I think it's a great product. I think they've got it. I think the Blitz decks, there's no better way to start this game than picking up a couple Blitz decks.
Throw in some sleeves and like a resource token or something in there. Make it look a little.
You know where to get sleeves. It's right next to the thing. You don't need it included. If it's included, it's never good. Whenever they start including that stuff, it's always like you're not going to get the good quality. It's like we got to get like these cheapo sleeves. None of those products are ever like, oh wow, those included sleeves were great. That's like you get your batteries included, and it's like. like Duramat brand. Wait, what's Duramat? Like what? Last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Buy your own sleeves.
It's a magnet box. It's the best TV around. Yeah.
Right.
Never heard of phony? Yeah.
Right.
Okay, this one coming from Stanley Hopkins and Tyler Barrett from Facebook asking, do you feel that Flesh and Blood has the makings to challenge or overtake the big three, being Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, and Pokemon?
What are your goals? Are your goals sales? Probably not. Are there other ways you can measure success? I would argue there's many. I think that Magic the Gathering in particular has focused in on only one measure of success. Recently, Mark Rosewater in Magic said, don't expect a popular set Battle Bond to have a sequel because its sales numbers weren't really there. And people reacted with a lot of shock because they were like, this was a great set. This was an amazing set. He's saying it didn't sell. I believe him that it didn't sell as well as like some of this other stuff they churn out. My question is that the only measure of success? Is there a way you could look at that product and say this product was a success in ways other than sales? Apparently, Wizards of the Coast says you can't. Apparently, unless every video I put out is number 1 out of 10, the other ones are not a success. And I disagree. I think there's other ways to measure success. I think Flesh and Blood and many other companies and games are very well poised to overtake the big three in those other avenues of success. I think you could be the number 1 competitive game in the world and not necessarily have the number 1 sales, but still be turning a profit. I think that is not mutually exclusive. I think you could say, yeah, but what kind of competitive scene does Magic have compared to Flesh and Blood? Flesh and Blood leaves them in the dust. They're almost there already.
All right. Next one from Clark, a great player in the Flesh and Blood community from Discord, asking, how long did you battle with the decision to quit your, quote, real job, I guess your teaching job prior to this?
Oh, yeah, a long time.
To focus on YouTube. But what was the tipping point to bring yourself to take that plunge? I took that plunge. It was long-winded thought. It is scary.
Yeah, I had a career in academia. I really did. I was an adjunct, so I didn't exactly have tenure, but I had established a career I could have gone on doing for the rest of my life. And I had transitioned to being part-time. And taking the plunge into full-time was really scary because it was walking away from the best colleges that I had relationships with and would never be able to return to if I did. And I kept teaching long after I needed to. There was a point where I was making what I was making as a teacher from the channel, and I was still teaching a couple classes as this kind of like little last bit of the cheese from the pizza that you can't break off. And I ended up getting those classes taken from me because they were under enrolled. So like one of the things is that if a class doesn't have whatever it is, 23 students enrolled, they're going to cancel the class. They're not going to pay you to teach 15 students. God forbid. And so it was literally like 2 days before the semester started. And the dean called me up and said, hey, bad news. Your class has got 15 students in it. We're canceling it. And I said, okay, cool. So what am I doing? And they said, you're reapplying next semester like you always do. And I said, you're calling me 3 days before like the class is supposed to start saying I don't have a job for 6 months? I've been teaching here 10 years. And they said, sorry, it doesn't have enough students in it. And I was like a little like gut punched by it. And it wasn't a financial at that point problem, but I realized just how little that job was there for me. If I got hit by a car right now, and let's say I do have medical insurance, thank God. That's something I didn't have as a professor, but as a YouTuber, I have medical insurance. Ponder on that. But let's say I didn't, and I walked out and I got hit by a car and I was in the emergency room and I needed help. I could make a video and said, I need help, and people would help me. And if I worked at that college and I got hit by a car, I could call my dean and say, I need help. And he'd say, sorry, tough shit. And when I realized that, thinking on that, I was like, screw this. I'm done. I was done already, but there's no reason to hang on to this. Why am I not biting this pizza cheese off? And that's when I decided I'm out of here.
Awesome. Well, I say we're glad you did. I mean,
yes, I was already. Yeah, it was little bits. It was the boiling of the frog. I didn't do anything like that. I didn't just quit my job overnight. It was little bits and pieces.
All right, this one from Felix asking or saying, thank you for being such a positive and wholesome voice in the space. What advice would you give to the current community builders in Flesh and Blood as the game grows to sort of maintaining the positive vibe and the wholesome atmosphere?
Remember always that you're not in competition with each other. It's something even in Magic, sometimes people need to remember. In the same way that I do not have to uninstall Skyrim in order to play Fallout, I don't have to unsubscribe from you to listen to him or her. In fact, when you have more people going to Spotify for podcasts or YouTube for videos or wherever your content is found, Twitch for streaming, whatever, when more people are seeking out content of your game on your platform, the better, because when they're done listening to him or her, they're going to go and listen to you. And so I really think the biggest mistake is whenever it's like, oh, I had a podcast. Now he has a podcast. Screw him. It's like that's where you start getting into aggression that is unnecessary. A rising tide lifts all boats. That's so true. That's why I'm here and why I come on whatever I can, because it's all to the benefit of all. And that's important to remember. And then beyond that, sometimes it might feel that toxicity sells, but it's ultimately self-defeating for the community and the game. And you want to lean in the opposite direction. Like you want people playing your game. You want people to feel welcome. You want people to feel joy. Don't lean into the easy clicks of hate and aggression. It doesn't end up, it burns up very fast and doesn't end up serving you well. That would be my advice.
Well said. Three last ones here. We can go through them quickly.
Where's the one I gave an A+ to?
Oh, that was the next one. It says,
All right, let's hit it.
I love your content, Brian. Your ability to be impartial is refreshing, being a constant in the TCG world. What keeps you going, even when not all TCGs you feature support your work?
I really like this question. I've never been asked it before. That's why. I've never been really asked this before, and so I really liked it. And I'd say it hurts sometimes, like especially with Magic, when the people who make the game that you love don't love you back. It can hurt like a dagger. And there have been times in the last 9+ years where it got to me, and I'm like, I'm not a bad person. I'm just trying to be a critic and this and it can be tough to deal with that. It can be tough to do a video on a game that you found. Like there I'm not going to say which one, but there was a game I found and I loved and I made a video on, and the company couldn't care less. And it felt a little hollow, where I was like, damn, I just did this thing and they didn't even retweet me or whatever. And then there can also be the opposite, where there's a lot of companies that desperately want you to do content on their game, but as Mom would say, they don't like you for you. And struggling with that is been hard. And what I landed on and what helped me navigate those waters is I realized that I'm not making the videos for Wizards of the Coast, and I'm not making the videos for Legend Story Studios. Sorry, James, but I'm not making the videos for you. I'm making the videos for the people watching this right now. I'm making the videos for the people who supported me so that I could leave my job where they wouldn't care if I got hit by a bus or not, and where they would pull my income, if a small child, and they would pull my income out from me days before I was supposed to begin the new semester, without a care in the world about what type of a nuclear bomb that could be having on my family's well-being. Even though I was someone who worked there for 10 years and stuff. The people who did that to me, the people who tune in, that's who the videos are for, and that's who my loyalty is to. I have no loyalty, sorry, James, to Legend Story Studios. I have no loyalty to Wizards of the Coast. I have loyalty to the people who tune in to watch me and have come for that impartial, honest opinion, and maybe sometimes it is a partial opinion. It's me. It's my opinion. What do you like? All right, well, I'm partial to this. But I will be open and honest about it, because that is what people support in me. And so that's why I always find ideas of like, oh, well, maybe he's just saying that to get favor from WotC again. Screw WotC. It ain't done nothing for me. Like I don't need that. What I need is the love and respect of the people who have given me that love and respect since day one, and that's who I work for. Beautiful. All right, we're gonna do one more. I know you got to go, so I appreciate. Last one. I do want to say, hey, that question was from Fabled Hero NZ from Twitter, so thank you so much for that submission. A+. Last one from Draconic Ash, asking, what is one mechanical thing from Flesh and Blood you wish could be incorporated into Magic, and any feature from Magic that you would like to see in Flesh and Blood, be it game mechanic or otherwise? I mean, I told you I love the equipment, and we do have equipment in Magic, but it's like you can put 5 pairs of boots on your commander if you want. There's no limit. I like this idea of actually equipping your character, your hero. I don't know how that would work in Magic. Restrictions and limits. We often make jokes. Oh, look, the snake is wearing a hat, and that doesn't make any sense. How are these boots on a snake? And I like the way that works in Flesh and Blood. I think that I don't want to take, at the end of the day, mechanics from Flesh and Blood and bring them into Magic, or things from Magic and bring them into Flesh and Blood, because that's what makes Magic Magic and what makes Flesh and Blood Flesh and Blood. I like that Flesh and Blood is not just trying to be Magic the Gathering. It's not just Magic the Gathering with, oh, it's got orange and purple energy or something, instead of mana. It's its own thing, and that's beautiful. There have been games that are like, oh, it's Magic. I don't like that. I like the distinction. I like the differences. I don't want it to just be a different flavor of the same thing. That's what I'd say.
I love it. Brian, aka The Professor, thank you so much for your candor and your candid approach to everything card games. Like you mentioned, subjectivity does not necessarily mean that you're under the thumb of anybody, and your opinion is yours, and we appreciate that. So thank you so much for doing the Instant Speed podcast, my friend.
Well, I appreciate greatly you having me here today.
If anybody does not know you or where to get more of your content, where can we get more of The Professor?
I have a newsletter you can subscribe to. No, wait, I'm on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, Tolarian Community College. That's the place. Tolarian Community College on YouTube. Hit subscribe.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again to all our sponsors. That would be kayfabecards.com, as well as BCW Supplies, and to all of our patrons, because without of you guys, again, frankly, this would be so much worse than it is. So big ups to you guys. Thank you very much for listening to the Instant Speed podcast. Don't forget, you're not losing if you're learning. So keep playing the game. You might win. We'll see you next time on ISP.
Well, I work